My name is Amy Fletcher. I am the youth pastor at Vineyard Community Church, and I am so excited that you're here with us. This is hopefully going to be a 5-minute message for 5-Minute Monday, and it's going to be based off of our biblical story from Sunday. So thanks for joining us. This week we are starting a new series called Threshold. Now, maybe you've never noticed a threshold before. It's simply the little piece at the bottom of a doorway that helps you go from one room to another. You cross over maybe hundreds, maybe even thousands a day, and you never notice it unless it's uneven. One of the great things about this series is that every time you walk through a threshold, you're going to start thinking about Jesus, which is a win in my book. I'm so excited for that. That's why we have the doorway here. This awesome door has been decorated by our students with some really cool stickers. So if you get a chance and you can zoom in on it, you should do that. My favorite threshold of all time is probably the wardrobe to Narnia. If you haven't read that series, I highly suggest it. There's a couple of really cool movies out as well. And I still get goosebumps every time I read of Lucy entering into Narnia for the first time. She starts to realize that the coats in the closet are no longer soft but prickly like evergreen trees, and that the ground underneath her feet is no longer smooth but crunchy like snow, and that the air in the wardrobe is no longer stagnant and stuffy but cool and refreshing. She knows that she has entered into something new even though it's unknown. And that one descriptor, that chapter, is so exciting for me. Thresholds are an indicator of change. It may just be a change from room to room, or it could be a life change. It could be leaving your house for the last time, knowing that you're moving to a new city and entering into a new phase of life. Maybe it's graduating from high school and going into the unknown of adulthood. Maybe even college, or whatever it is you're deciding to do. This week, we're going to visit the Old Testament stories of change. That's what we're going to be doing through this whole series, is looking at Old Testament stories of change. And this week, we are looking at Hagar. Hagar is found in Genesis 16 and 21. In Genesis 16, we find Hagar, the servant of Sarai. Sarai was promised a child, and not just a child, but lots of children, a nation of children. But she and Abram were getting on in age, and she decided kind of enough was enough. And so she gave her servant Hagar to her husband Abraham as a wife to conceive a child that would hopefully build a nation. Hagar does get pregnant, but this isn't God's plan. And as such, it didn't really go well. Sarah gets upset at Hagar. And she gets upset that Hagar feels and acts like more than a servant. She is acting above her class, is what Sarah feels like. And honestly, that's maybe because she is. She is now one of Abraham's wives. She is no longer simply Sarah's servant. But Sarah doesn't like it, and so she treats her harshly. Because of this, Hagar runs away. And when she takes a break by a spring, the Lord meets with her, and he says this: "Hagar, servant of Sarah, where have you come from and where are you going?" She said, "I am fleeing from my mistress, Sarah." The angel of the Lord said to her, "Return to your mistress and submit to her." The angel of the Lord also said to her, "I will surely multiply your offspring so that they cannot be numbered for multitude." And the angel of the Lord said to her, "Behold, you are pregnant and shall bear a son. You shall call his name Ishmael, because the Lord has listened to your affliction. He shall be a wild donkey of a man, his hand against everyone and everyone's hand against him. And he shall dwell over against all his kinsmen." So she called the name of the Lord who spoke to her, "You are the God of seeing." For she said, "Truly here I have seen him who looks after me." So Hagar returns and has a son and names him Ishmael, which means God hears. Her son grows in Abraham's family, and at 13 years old, God fulfilled his promise to Sarah and Abraham. Sarah gets pregnant when Abraham was about 100 years old. She named her son Isaac, which means he laughs. They were so old in age. He laughs. As Isaac grows, I can only imagine that life in this family got a little uncomfortable for Hagar and Ishmael. See, Ishmael was born to inherit, not through God's plans or his mother's. And now Sarah's child is going to inherit everything of Abraham's. Around the time that the child Isaac was considered healthy and strong enough to survive in their society, around the age of 2 or 3 years old, the family decides to throw a party. They're going to celebrate. And Ishmael at this time is 15 or 16 years old. And at the time of the celebration, he decides to mock Isaac, this 2 or 3 year old. In researching these verses, it seems that this mocking had to do with their standing with the family, within the family. So it's not just a simple joke between family members. They're not just ragging on each other. They're not doing something big brotherly that's kind of funny, but it's actually harmful and ill-intentioned words. And for this, Sarah demands that Hagar and Ishmael must go. Abraham's upset for his son, rightly so, but the Lord speaks to him and calms him down and kind of says, I promise I will take care of them. They will be okay. So this is where we meet Hagar in Genesis 21. She's wandering aimlessly in the wilderness. They're famished, they're dehydrated. She lays the boy to rest underneath a bush and leaves as she simply cannot watch her son die. And this is what the verses say. But God heard the boy crying, and the angel of God called to Hagar from heaven. Hagar, what's wrong? Do not be afraid. God has heard the boy crying as he lies there. Go to him and comfort him, for I will make a great nation from his descendants. Then God opened Hagar's eyes, and she saw a well full of water. She quickly filled her water container and gave the boy a drink. And God was with the boy as he grew up in the wilderness. He became a skillful archer, and he settled in the wilderness of Paran. God hears their distress. I think the reason it says that God hears the boy, Ishmael, is a reminder to Hagar that he hears her. It's in the name of her son. God hears you. God hears. God hears you in your distress, and he will respond. Then God provides for their immediate needs. In her distress, Hagar doesn't actually see the well of water. It was there, but she was so overwhelmed by the thought of losing her son, of dying in the desert, that she doesn't see the resources right before her. So God opens her eyes to the things that are already there and available to her. Do you ever feel that way sometimes? So overcome by the what ifs of the future and the unknowns, and kind of in a downward spiral, unable to see what God has provided right before you, the next step, the water for your soul. A spring is there. Ask God to open your eyes. And last but not least, God is faithful to fulfill his promises. He promised Hagar many children and to be with Ishmael as he grows up. And God is faithful to keep all of his promises. Maybe you're unsure of the promises that God has made to you. As a child of God, God has made you promises. They're found in his word. There's a list in the description box below. I'm going to end with this, okay? So there's a beautiful, beautiful part in the Narnia series, Voyage of the Dawn Treader. The ship is trapped inside of a dark, confusing, dense mist, rowing and rowing in circles. They cannot see where they're going or where they have been. The crew members start crying out, "We will never get out! Never get out!" Lost in the wilderness of the waves and the darkness, Lucy whispers, "Aslan, Aslan, if you have ever loved us at all, send us help now." The darkness did not grow any less, but she begins to feel a little, very, very little bit better. After all, nothing has really happened to us yet, she thought. When you feel lost or confused or overwhelmed by the future, unsure of the circumstances, call out to God. Your circumstances may not change, but He is faithful to hear, respond in love, and walk you through the darkest night. Thank you for joining us for our 5 Minute Monday. Hope to see you next week. Bye.